when you are choosing somebody to be in your birth space to support you, it shouldn't just be the person that makes you feel guilty for not having them there that you invite in. This should be somebody that is going to love you and protect your space and do exactly what you want to do. They have no other motives, no other desires. They're not trying to heal their own birth experience by supporting you through yours. This is somebody who believes in whatever you need them to believe in you during this time. This week's episode is all about how to include people into your birth space as kind of your own personal doula. So imagine that for whatever reason you do not want a doula or can't afford or don't have one locally. You don't have a doula at your birth space, but you really want one. But you have your mom or your sister or your aunt or your birth partner or a friend or family member that you want in that birth space that is planning to be there to assist you, and you want to kind of give them a crash course. Well, that's what this episode is all about today. So let's talk about some of the benefits of having somebody in your space that is holding space for you and can kind of help you through the process of birth. First of all, you actually are going to reduce, this is shown, to reduce your length of labor. So the amount of time that you are in labor when you have support people that know what they're doing and can be of support to you, it is less, which always sounds great. Unless you are one of those moms that has a precipitous labor and you're like, I went from 0 to 30 in like 10 seconds and what just happened? Then you might want to be like, actually, let's do the opposite of those things, right? Which I'm having some of the Office vibes right now, where Kevin is telling Pam how to delay labor by doing the opposite of things. And if you know that, you know that. I am not quoting it here. Let's move on. But it also will decrease, it's shown to decrease the amount of pain that a mom experiences. So again, if you're looking to experience less pain or discomfort during labor, this is a really good reason to have somebody there. It can decrease the chance of having a cesarean birth, which again, an unnecessary cesarean, which can be a great thing. And it is shown to boost confidence and improve the experience of labor, including how you feel when you look back on it, which is always a big thing that I'm talking about. I hope you have a birth that you look back on with joy. That is a big, big thing for me because it is not just the experience of what happened and how long things took and how your body went through it. It's how we're treated and it's how you feel afterwards. When you look back, even though maybe you had a really crazy experience and you didn't exactly get to pick all the things that you would have wanted for your birth plan, they kind of went sideways. But you can look back and say, yeah, but I had a decision in every single step of the way. I got to make decisions. I was respected. I was heard. People loved and supported me. I was not alone in any of that. And you can look back and say, wow, that was the hardest thing I've ever done and the coolest thing I've ever experienced. Let's do it again. And we'll give you a couple months after having your baby to feel that way. But I want you to have something that you can look back on and smile and feel good about and want to share positively with other people. It's funny. I recently had somebody comment, and I usually don't get into it on Instagram, and I wasn't confrontational. I wasn't confrontational with this mom, but I did kind of have to say something. She had said something about, I get so annoyed because people get so focused on the birth story, and I'm not quoting this perfectly, so I apologize if this is not perfectly correct, but something to the effect of, I get so annoyed when people only focus on the birth story to the point of not realizing that a healthy mom and baby is the most important thing. And I kind of responded like, no, moms don't do that. And I'm not even saying my part right, but it was basically, the birth story does matter. How we're treated does matter. How we walk through that experience does matter. And I don't know of any mom, I've never seen any mom ever that was so concerned about having this beautiful, glorious, perfect birth story that she didn't put her baby first. In fact, a lot of the time, the struggle or upset comes from being so concerned that you're putting baby first, that baby is safe, that that's going to be okay, before that you're willing to throw all kinds of stuff out the door at the end. And the goal with any good birth and being a good support as you're going along is to make sure that it doesn't have to feel that way, that if things do end up a little different than you had planned, you still have a say in the process, you understand what's happening, and that you're supported throughout that. So that even though if it looks like the only thing that happened was a healthy mom and healthy baby because we've got some big, crazy, scary things that happened, and at the end it's like, oh, at least mom and baby are okay. then we can still look back and say, and even though that was crazy and scary, I felt supported and loved, and I was part of that. So that is a big thing for me when I talk to you guys. And I know it's big for you too. And I don't know any of you moms that are ever going to, not put your baby first. And with that, your health, like making sure that you are both okay throughout the process so that you can take care of that baby at the end. Now, if for some reason, like I said, you're choosing not to have a doula, but you do want support, then it can really happen well from family members and friends. And in my personal opinion, so you take this for what it's worth, take it with a grain of salt, take what you like, leave the rest, and do what you want to do. But I really appreciated having somebody in my birth space that had given birth before. So that would mean a woman for me. Like, yes, my husband is definitely going to be there. He is definitely my rock solid, that I need him there. And it was really helpful for me to have a woman who had been through it before in that birth space. Now, it didn't have to be a doula. In fact, my mother-in-law was there. And if I didn't have a doula, her presence and knowing that she had done it before would have been very, very comforting and awesome too. I knew in my case with my third baby that I was going to need a little bit more support going unmedicated at home. I was aware of that. And so I made sure that we provided that for me. But if I needed to lean on somebody else for whatever reason, then I would have trained them up the best way I knew how. And for all of you listening, this podcast is going to be helpful for that. If you are a My Essential Birth mom, and I say this in the birth course, if you have somebody helping you out, like, yes, your birth partner should definitely be watching it. And yes, there are definitely very specific things that he should be doing during your labor process. But if your mom or your sister or somebody else is going to be there, we tell you, take them through the birth course. Have them watch it. They need to understand what is going on in your head and in your body, like what you have learned and what the process of birth looks like, so that they can really help you and be hands-on. So without this being video and anything like that, to be able to show you, this is where you put your hands for a double hip squeeze, and this is how you do some other counter pressure or rebozo work or massage in this area. I'm still going to try and walk you through some of the things that they can do. So if you're not part of the birth course and you want to be, yes, please go do that now. But either way, have whoever you plan to have with you in your birth space listen to this episode, okay? So some of this is going to depend on you too. You have to know how you like to be supported. So before you have somebody in that space, like as a doula, for example, when I go and I meet with moms, I'm asking them right away, tell me a little bit about you. And I asked Dad, like, I'll ask the mom first. Mom, when you're upset or frustrated with something or sad about something, how do you deal with that? How do you cope with that? Do you go and take a long warm bath? You need to get away from people? Does it help you to have support and be with your husband or your birth partner? Do you feel like when you're hurt, do you take medication? Like, what does it look like for you? How are you coping with your own emotions and physical ailments? And so you have to know that about yourself. And then we ask about like verbal support and stuff. How do you like support? Does it help you when you are working hard or stressed to have somebody tell you how great of a job you're doing? And what's interesting is these things were even asked to me when I was looking for labor support, and I had to really think about them. I didn't know. And so if you don't know, you can lean on your husband or your birth partner a little bit, because they might. They know you pretty well. And so even when you get confused about these things, they're like, oh, like, she definitely loves when, she's stressed and whatever, when I like bring her home a chocolate shake and I don't know, like a yummy treat. Or she just likes to be alone. So I like set up her bed and we dim the lights and I give her, like a nice warm pack and let her like settle in or whatever and give her the remote. It's whatever works for you. But you have to know those things so that you can relay that to whoever is going to be in your birth space, and they will have ideas on how to help you. The other thing is, if you're doing things like you have certain positive affirmations that you're saying to yourself every day, are those things that you want somebody verbally repeating to you? Would it be helpful? Or are you just going to be repeating them in your mind? Is it something that you want to be seeing in your birth space? Is that like a printed out, like we have printable affirmations? Is that something that you want to see in your birth space? So you have to decide what things work well for you, and then relay that information, communicate that information to whoever is going to be supporting you. Now, the other prep that whoever is coming should have is they should have their own stuff. So now let's kind of, and like I said, this is a crash course and it's not going to be like a full on, study. But so let's move on to the when we are talking about moving into the labor space, what do they need to bring with them? And they should definitely have their own birth bag. So in my doula bag, for example, I have a couple of things. I have a change of clothes. I always have my cell phone and my cell phone charger. Maybe I have some like B12 vitamins or something like that. I will have, for myself, I have menstrual items in case I'm either on my cycle or I might become on my cycle during that time. I have food. That is a big one. It is a high protein, non-stinky food, at least as much as I can find. Like, for example, when I went to this last birth, right now I'm completely carnivore, trying to clean up some stuff that's going on with my body. And so it's all meat. And that is not the easiest thing to bring with me because what I'm used to throwing into my bag are some protein bars and even protein powder in case I need to like run and make a quick shake. I'll bring beef jerky and things like that. But this time I had more of like a bunch of very specific beef sticks, like grass-fed, no added anything, whatever, and they can be a little stinky. So when I did have to utilize those and step out for a minute, I just went into a different space in the birth room. In this case, I actually just ran into the bathroom real quick and like shoved 3 down really fast, drank a bunch of water, made sure I had some mints. I also bring a toothbrush and toothpaste though, because you do not want to be in mom's face with stinky breath. So you make sure that you have all that kind of stuff. I also bring lotion. I have straws for mom. Depending on where she's giving birth, if they don't have straws, that can be really annoying when you're like, in a certain position and you need water and you are not in a position to like sit up and take a sip of water. Having straws with you can be really great. I think I mentioned chapstick, but deodorant, anything that makes me a little more palatable for mom, like especially when you're working hard and doing it for over 24 hours sometimes, it just is what it is. So make sure that your birth bag is nice and packed. And then with that, like even with this last birth that I did, for example, I did have a moment where there was enough of a lull or like pause time or things were going well that I could step out, run to the cafeteria. And I had I think I had done like 2 burger patties and a salmon patty and then went back upstairs. So make sure that you're taking care of yourself. That's absolutely crucial, but you don't do it at the expense of mom needing you. So your timing has to be good. And if you haven't been doing it for a while, you may not know exactly. But if there is free time before you get extremely hungry and before things get really serious for mom, where it's like one contraction on top of the other, you're doing counter pressure, you can't leave, then you go and take that break and make sure that you nourish yourself as well. And your job will be to also remind dad to do the same. And with there being more than one support person, being that there's dad and at least one more person, you guys will be able to kind of switch off a little bit if needed. And so that can be really helpful too. Now, what should the birth person be doing? And some of this I highly recommend that you practice before going into the actual labor and meeting mom there. Don't just plan, for moms that are listening, don't just plan to have your friends there. You have them come over to your house before, you communicate, you talk about all the things I already talked about with them, and then you guys practice some hands-on stuff if you plan to have them touching you at all, because it can be super awkward if the first time that they are laying hands on you is in the birth space. You need to have them touch you before, like, hey, this is, show them on their hand. This is about the pressure and consistency of like how I like to be massaged. This is my preference. Can you show me on me now? Which might sound a little weird, but if they're going to be there and you're inviting them into that space and they have a work to do, you have to show them what they need to do. So make sure that hands-on stuff happens before. Practice doing some counter pressure. Okay. Double hip squeeze is one of them. And that is where, see, this is, I need videos. But double hip squeeze is one of them. Dad can work with the support person, one person on either side. That's probably the favorite because they can really push and get in there. But if mom's in a weird position or somebody needs to take a break and you got to jump in, you just got to know where to put your hands. So I want you to think of mom's hips. So say that she's in a hands and knees position. Her weight is evenly distributed between her front hands and her knees, okay? Even distribution of weight. And you are kind of squatting behind her. You find the top of her hip bones with your fingertips and you kind of cup your hands and you, the palm of your hand kind of will sit into a squishy part of mom's bum. That's what I call it, the squishy part, right? And so once you've got that kind of squishy part, you rotate your hands. So your fingertips are now, your palms stay in the same spot and your fingertips aim towards the spine. So your hands are facing each other and you're going to squeeze together, right? Squeeze towards the spine. So you're pushing the hips together. That double hip squeeze is an awesome, awesome one. But if you don't practice that before, you might be in the wrong spot. And mom might really want you to be doing that double hip squeeze or have some kind of counter pressure, and she's telling you to stop. And it's not because she doesn't need it. It's because you're doing it wrong. So these are things you have to practice prior. So just ask her, does this feel good? How about pressure here? Do you like this kind of massage? Or even, can I play with your hair? If you see mom and she is stressed, or you can tell like the wrinkly forehead, you just kind of like grab your finger and your thumb and you just push it apart. And you tell her like, when I do this, that's your reminder. You just let those eyebrows relax. And then you can even walk her through a relaxation. Take her head to toe and say, hey, I'm just going to do like a verbal relaxation. You get into a comfortable position and we'll just do it for like 5 minutes. And I'm going to practice taking you from your head to your toes. And I'm going to say different parts of the body. And I'm going to tell you to release or let go of those. And as I do that, I want you to physically let go of those areas. So mom will have to practice the doula, live-in doula, practice doula, friend doula, whatever. They're going to have to come and do this with you. So now that we've done all of that, let's talk about the actual labor. And let's say you are birth space, no matter your home, hospital, whatever. So this person will come into that birth space and they will set up the space if it's not already set. However, even if it is quote unquote set, they're going to double check some things. How is the lighting? What does it smell like? Are we looking for, and this is a conversation I had with you before, like you're like, I want to use this essential oil and this scent and whatever. I want to use candles over here, whatever it is, you have to tell them. Okay. So they're going to check on the lighting. What does it smell like? Familiarize yourself with the birth room. So like when I go to a hospital birth or a birth center, it's like, okay, where are the washcloths? Where are the birth balls? Do I have to request anything? Where are the heating pads? Where are the Chucks pads? Where I'm just like, where are all the things? Extra pillows, blankets. I want to know where all of those things are so that I can be really useful in the moment, that I'm not having to search for that barf bags. Like when things get going, do I know where these things are and do I know where they are quickly? And things that you have to request, like I said, maybe birth balls won't be in the room, wireless monitors. Sometimes there's only one set and somebody's using them. You need to know that up front if you want to do intermittent monitoring, or if you want to be able to use wireless monitors, spend time in the shower or the bathtub or go walking down the hall. You're going to need to know what the situation of that is before. And then your job will be to help mom do certain things during labor. So one of them is movement. So every 30 minutes, we're going to help mom to change position. We're also going to encourage her to go to the bathroom because your bladder can actually get in the way of dilation and cause more pain during contractions. So it is the doula's job to make sure that mom is drinking water and using the restroom. And so we say, every 30 minutes, but realistically it ends up being like every hour or so that we're making sure she's at least headed to the restroom during that time. And she'll tell you, if she is happy in her spot or whatever, but these are things that you're definitely at least offering. And then be aware of your touch. So when mom is having a contraction, your hand should be on her before the contraction begins. If you're putting your hands on her once she's like really working through the contraction, she's going to be like new sensation throwing me off, have to focus, right? But if your hands are on her before and the counter pressure or the massage or the light touch or even just the like touch of you on her skin to comfort her happens before, then she will be more comfortable during the actual contraction. So that is something that is important for you to know beforehand. You just make sure that hands are touching if they're going to be touching before the contraction. And if not, that you're not just hovering and staring. Nobody likes to be watched. So you can be next to her, you can watch her, but if you're not touching her or doing anything specific like that, then it's like, you're doing a great job. Keep it up. You're going to give some verbal cues and feedback. Okay. The other thing is checking the temperature. So part of like setting up the space, and that's, if she wants any affirmations up or whatever you guys decide to do. Maybe she brought baby items or pictures from home to make it more comfortable. Or you're at the house and it's like, we said we were going to put these little string lights up because we just wanted the right ambiance. Whatever it is, that's your job. And then making sure that the temperature's right. She's going to be all kinds of cold and hot. So the other thing that I bring in my birth bag is a jacket, and one that I can like unzip or take off very quickly if I need to, because once you get moving and hands are on, you might not have a chance. The only thing you're going to be able to do is roll your sleeves up unless you have a jacket you can zip off and throw off of you. So just make sure that you're prepared that way. And then we talked about dimming the lights and all that kind of stuff. as far as sound goes, if mom has like a birth playlist or any kind of music or meditation sounds or anything like that that she wants in the background, make sure that that gets set up too. And that would be the same for like essential oils, diffusers, anything like that. Remember that your role is to make mom comfortable. It's to protect her space. And that doesn't mean that you have to go after the providers for saying things. That is not your job, but it is your job to protect that space so that when people come in, you let mom know, hey, that's the nurse. A lot of times they introduce themselves anyways, right? Or, hey, that's the midwife. Or, hey, your sister got here with the chicken that you asked for an hour ago and now you don't want because you're going to throw up and you're going through transition. I don't know. But you announce kind of who's there, and then you announce to the people that are there, either like, oh, isn't she doing so good? Or you lean into mom and like, keep going, like you're doing great, keep at it, especially during contractions. But once things really progress and she's in that very active stage of labor, chances are she's eyes closed, very focused and ready to go. So you're kind of just, we're going to keep this mom safe and comfortable. Remember, I talked about movement. So when we talk about moving positions every 30 minutes, there are many different positions that you can end up in. So if mom, and some of that will have to do with like if she's at the hospital and they're doing monitoring and stuff too, because they're going to want her maybe next to the monitoring machine if you don't have the wireless ones. So say that she's doing some of that intermittent monitoring and she's in the bed. It's like she can be leaned back at a 45-degree angle. She can be on a birth ball and hung over the side of the bed. She could be standing next to the bed and swaying her hips. You can lift those hospital beds specifically all the way up, and she can just lean right over them and sway her hips and hang her belly. You can also be hands and knees on the bed, and with that, your hands kind of over the back of the bed so that mom can just be swaying and let her belly hang. If you're at home or hospital, it's the same kind of thing. You just stack a bunch of pillows up so she can be standing if she wants to be, or you can use countertops or whatever is around so that she can be in that position. Some moms like to like rest and be on their side for a little bit. That's great. You can use a peanut ball or pillows in between the leg just for a little bit more comfort, keeping those hips nice and wide, which helps with progression, but it also helps with comfort for mom during contractions. And there's different ways that you can support in those different areas, right? So hands on the hips, hands on the back, like the lower back. You'll notice as baby moves down, your hands are going to be like on her butt, just like maybe like pushing really hard just as that head moves down. You're like counter pressure happens in the bottom now. Just depends on where that baby is. So pay attention to her for the contractions. Don't get stuck paying attention to the monitors. It's so easy to do. But first of all, there's a little bit of a delay. So by the time you see it going up, she's already like 2 breaths in. But the other thing is you can get distracted by ignoring her in between contractions and just staring at the monitor to see when the next one's coming. Especially if she doesn't have an epidural, it's really important to not get stuck on the monitor. Monitors can be helpful when she does have an epidural, especially when we're talking about pushing and stuff. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. For a mom that is not using an epidural or can still feel her contractions, whether or not she has one, you watch mom. She will give you the sign. You'll notice by her breathing, she's breathing into a contraction. Once that first breath is like starting up, that's when like hands on before things get intense. And then you walk her through it and you remind her, you can do anything for a minute. Keep breathing. You're stronger than you think you are. You're doing it. Keep going. So that's all the stuff that we have to do. And then making sure that the different positions that happen in between contractions and with mom's consent. So it's like, hey, and sometimes it's with her consent, but she needs a gentle nudge. For example, like, hey, we've been in this position for like 45 minutes and that's awesome and you're doing great. How about we do one more contraction like this and then we flip sides? Or how about after this one, we head to the bath? And then she's like, yeah, okay. Like she can wrap her mind around that. Sometimes she has to be told what to do, but it's still with her consent. So she'll tell you, she'll be like, heck no, that's not happening. Or, okay, yeah, after this next contraction. And sometimes when you see mom, see, this is where I could go like a little bit too far on this episode, but when you notice mom has kind of gotten herself into a funk where like she can't get out of it, that's when you're like, hey, like, even though she's saying like, no, I'm not moving, no, but you can tell she's kind of moving into that, like, it's past pain with a purpose. It's moving into the suffering zone, that it's like, hey, you're doing great. You have to get her attention. Like, hey, look at me. You're doing great. We're going to try a different position and work through this next one. Okay. Follow me. And sometimes they need that. So hopefully you're connected enough. If you are invited into the birth space, hopefully this person that's invited is connected enough with you and that they will kind of be able to read that. They should also be somebody, I feel like this goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyways. They should be somebody that gets along with your birth partner, unless you are specifically inviting them because you don't get along with your birth partner, and that is a separate conversation. But this should not be like your best friend that causes issues between you and your birth partner. That's not the time to invite them there. This is somebody that needs to work well with your birth partner, respect your birth partner, and respect you so that it can be a good situation. Like I said, should have been unsaid, but I'm going to say it anyways. If mom does have an epidural, if you choose to have an epidural, you need somebody that knows a little bit about moving you around with an epidural, where they can request from the nurse, hey, she's on her back right now, even at a 45-degree angle, which you're going to make sure mom is at a 45-degree angle at least. Let's move her. We'd like to rotate left and right. And that's really important to actually have some like rotation and a peanut ball or lots of pillows so that mom's hips can be wide and open and there's some movement happening, because the baby does need to navigate that pelvis. So that should absolutely be happening. I already talked about hydrating her. Make sure that she's getting sips of water. If she has the epidural, at least that she's getting ice chips. She's still going to need chapstick and attention. If she is resting, that is a good time for you to rest too, or eat. Like eat first, then rest. Whatever you need to do to take care of yourself, and then be in the room for when she does need you, because whether it's because people are coming in and they're checking and she's becoming closer to pushing, or she's starting to feel things again, because epidurals, don't always numb everything, and they don't numb it forever. They need it to be a little bit more dull for when it's pushing time. Then you want to be there to be able to support for sure. I also talked about affirmations. Ask mom what her favorite ones are. Mom, tell whoever is helping you what your favorite ones are. Either have them up or have somebody saying them to you. So it's important to do. And then if you have an opportunity and mom's okay with it, take pictures. It is fun to capture some of the kind of behind the scenes and love that happens between mom and dad, or whoever might be in the birth room, even capturing some of the birth team just as like memories and stuff for her. Ask her if she wants you next to her to support her when she's pushing, or if she wants you to capture that. Make sure that you speak with the care providers, or that you speak with the care providers, knowing what is okay to capture and not capture, or where they can be or not be. You don't want to get into a situation where they're asking somebody in the room to leave because they're just in the way or causing a whatever, because they're not kind of obeying some of those rules. So we want to make sure that it's a good experience for everyone, and you don't want to have to lose any support while you're in there. And maybe I should have started with this, but I'm going to kind of end with it anyways. When you are choosing somebody to be in your birth space to support you, it shouldn't just be the person that makes you feel guilty for not having them there that you invite in. This should be somebody that is going to love you and protect your space and do exactly what you want to do. They have no other motives, no other desires. They're not trying to heal their own birth experience by supporting you through yours. This is somebody who believes in whatever you need them to believe in you during this time. So whatever kind of birth you want, and if you're getting the epidural or not getting the epidural, or you want to get up or sit down or what, like, it doesn't matter. This person needs to be on the same page. They need to understand your birth plan. They need to respect you completely. They need to have a good relationship with your birth partner. And then that's who you invite into your birth space. So don't get guilted into it by a mom or family member or even a friend that's like, well, you were at mine, or I can't believe you wouldn't want your mother there. Why not? You get to choose. And you can also choose to ask somebody to step out and just say, hey, I need a couple minutes with my husband or with my birth partner. Would it be okay if you just stepped out? That person should be okay with that too. They shouldn't take offense to it. And if you ever run into a situation where somebody in your birth space is not working for whatever reason, maybe you've made the mistake, this happens and it's okay. Maybe you've made the mistake of bringing somebody in thinking that they'd be okay and then they're just not. You can ask them to step out, and then you can ask whoever is in your birth team to ask them to leave so that you can remove that. Like in a hospital setting, if they step out and you tell a nurse, don't let them back in, they're not getting back in. Birth center, they can stand as guards. Like that is what your midwife and stuff is for if they need to be. So think carefully before inviting them in, because you don't need the extra drama. But if for some reason you have somebody in there that is not vibing with you for whatever reason, you can ask them to leave. That can include like a an unsupportive nurse or somebody too. Like you can ask for a new nurse or something. So we just want to make sure that our birth space is really protected, but also understand that this person is going to see you naked and vulnerable and possibly all kinds of things, going on and coming out of you. So make sure that it's somebody that you are totally fine, comfortable having see and experience and be a part of that. But as always, I am here to help you in any way that I can. So if you are curious about how to get somebody involved, even after listening to this episode, or you just want to have a little back and forth, you can go ahead and reach out at hello@myessentialbirth.com. Myself, and we've got some assistants there, are super happy to help you along the way. So don't get stuck. Don't feel overwhelmed. Definitely set up the birth team that you feel is best for you. And hopefully this episode helps you. And with that, I guess I will see you guys next week. I hope you're enjoying 2025. This year, I feel like is off to a good start. And we've got a lot of really awesome episodes coming up. So I'm looking forward to that. And I hope you are too.